Hardy Construction.
What's up, everybody? It's Hardy Construction. You can find us at hardyconstruction.tumblr.com, youtube.com/hardyconstruction, as well as facebook.com/the Hardy Construction with your host, Comp, and
Cheeks.
today's film is
I Am a Hero, 2015.
I Am a Hero, 2015. One day after returning from work late in the evening, Hideo witnesses a traffic accident in which a car crashes into a nearby pedestrian, killing the victim instantly. However, despite... Somebody just wrote like a long thing. Anyway. However, despite severe injuries, including... Is this in the movie? Including a broken neck, the victim's body stands up and walks away. Hideo questions
yeah,
whether...
it is in the movie.
Hideo questions whether this is another one of his hallucinations, but strange events begin happening around him. I think
Remember
this
the head's like on upside down and
yeah, I get it. I think,
away.
but I think the person who wrote this is like knows the comic, so they wrote because he does not suffer hallucinations in the movie like he does in the comic. Anyway, this film, I Am a Hero, 2015. Is a Japanese film based on a manga. It's a zombie horror action film directed by Shinsuke Sato, written by Kengo Hanazawa, who wrote the original manga, and the screenplay adaptation was by Akiko Nogi, starring Masami Nagasawa, Miho Suzuki, and Kasumi Arimura. A lot of people actually star in this film, and it's based on, like I said, a Japanese comic book that I actually read a fair amount in the past, and when I heard the film was being made, I was a little bit nervous because as far as Japanese films are, I would say the genre films, the ones that are adapted from the comic books, are not that good. Like they can't do it right for some reason. Yeah, it's weird because they obviously
all the ones you've shown me I've loved.
No, I'm talking about the comic book films based on the comic books. The ones that we've seen are mostly like horror films, original films, or drama films. They're not really based on something, as far as besides Ichi the Killer, which was very good.
Well,
but it
you
took
showed me
shot.
that one with the weird fish things with the
Gyo
legs.
Yeah, but that was the cartoon one, right? But that Gyo by Junji Ito, the comic book is about 100 million times better than that film was, because they went in a completely different direction, and they made the female the hero, and they made the guy the like loser. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's like there was no reason to do it anyway. Like it was like they just made it weird, and they had like a threesome scene for no reason to kind of make it was strange. It was still a fun movie,
nothing wrong
but
with threesomes.
It's nowhere near the especially if it's male. But it was nowhere near the original source material. It wasn't as good as it. It suffers a lot. Like Japanese films, for some reason they can't get it right. Like there's a cartoon called Attack on Titan that a lot of kids love in a comic book about these humanoid giants. They're
I saw
like
the first episode of it. It was pretty
right.
cool.
Like they attack this town that has a wall in front of it, and the monsters are, they're trying to keep them at bay, but the monsters kind of just break through the wall and eat people and stuff like that. And then I saw parts of the live action film, and it's one of the hugest things over there. It's like a huge thing, sort of like Dragon Ball Z is huge, and it was horrendous. Like I couldn't believe I was looking, and I was like, these people make this up, so how come they can't adapt it? Like, what is getting lost in the translation? Like, it took, I don't know how long it took for American
in art and animation and stuff,
right? Like
live action.
Like, do you see how long it took? But like, I still can't believe that we're in an age where, like, Captain America is actually a fun film. Like, there's people who hate comic book movies no matter what, so there's nothing you can do about it. But like, they even got that entertaining in a way, like the Winter Soldier movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that know nothing about comics that love all of the Marvel movies right now.
But they translate the material okay enough that it's fun. It becomes entertaining. I'm not saying all the Marvel movies are entertaining, but at least the Captain American ones
are
pretty good to me.
Good. I mean,
Yeah, Civil War and stuff like that. But like, really, for some reason, the Japanese ones can't do it, and that's what I was worried about with this film, because the comic book is really dense. I told Danny to read some of the chapters. I told him
the first volume.
I tried to tell him to read what the film covered, but like I looked at it and I was like, oh no, there's a lot of there's a lot of reading in this book, because it covers a lot. If you wanted to actually see, I Am a Hero is actually being released in comic book stores, in American comic book stores, and also you can find scanlations.
I got up to maybe 20 minutes into the film on my reading.
Yeah, and
it's going to go way past the film too, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's stuff that in this film that's not even in the comic book that's not even hinted to in the film. Obviously, let's get into what this is about. Who is the protagonist of this film?
Hideo. How do you say this? Hideo
Hideo.
Suzuki.
His
Yeah.
name loosely, like the way you write it, because
Hero.
Japanese have a way of writing their names that, like the lettering can mean hero, stuff like that. So that's why he's like, I am a hero. But go ahead. So this Hideo guy, who is he?
All right. He is a. I guess he's kind of like a failed manga. He had a successful manga, and then it got canceled, and now he's like an assistant manga artist, and I think he's like miserable.
Yeah, he's basically a guy who's about 30, in his mid 30s, like 30 to 35 years old. And there's a lot of like comic book artists. Like, what's crazy is when I was younger, like it took me a long time to learn how to draw, even the way that I am, and I'm still trying to learn how to be a better artist, but I'm pretty comfortable in the way I was. But I remember being like 12 years old, and I knew this kid who was one of my best friends in junior high, and he was like a prodigy. Like, he just knew how to draw at his age, and I would be like, Jesus Christ, how can... So, I mean, it's like funny to see...
And it like makes you feel horrible.
Yeah, it does, because it makes you be like, oh my God, I can't draw for shit. Like, you learn not to draw around those people. But with this character, Hideo is sort of this guy who is a failed mangaka, and like his artwork, like some of it looks kind of crude in the comic actually itself, because we're kind of switching, because the movie does a pretty good adaptation of the first couple chapters of the comic book, and getting Hideo's
so far
character
it's pretty
right.
spot on. It's
like pretty spot on, but the only differences that they get that they change in the film itself is that Hideo actually has hallucinations. Like, he talks to this.
What was his name? Eugene or something?
I think it's Ueno. It's like a. Let me get that back. I saw the character's name, but I forget. Anyway, in the comic, it doesn't matter because we're talking about the film. But in the comic book, he is sort of friends with this strange, like, amorphous young boy who has like a strange, like, really unsettling face, and it's funny.
It took me a while to figure it out. Like, at first I was like really confused. Like, who the hell is this?
Yeah, when I first read the comic, I was like, "What's going on?" Is this guy just kind of
and then
imagining
he popped
everything?
Out of like a sink, and I was like, "Okay, it's not real."
Yeah. So, and another funny thing about Hideo is that he's like one of the very few legal gun owners in Japan, because guns aren't a huge thing in Japan like they are in America, where you can kind of just buy guns and stuff.
I liked when they made that reference. They were like, if this was America, I would have shot all of you and it would have been over.
Yeah, because like in here, like, he's super serious about gun rights in the movie. Just like in the comic book, like, he actually questions everything, and he's like, is it legal to pull my gun out now? And he's like always worried about it, which is kind of funny. In the film, as an American, you can be like, why don't you just shoot everybody? But he's like a total different mindset because he's in Japan. But Hideo's this failed mangaka. He lives with he lives on and off with his girlfriend. In the comic book, I actually think he has his own place, but he stays at his girlfriend's house. And they radically changed the girlfriend's personality from the comic book to the film. Yeah, they made her a lot
meaner in the movie.
In the film, she's just kind of, but it's funny because I've been in those relationships where I guess she's been with him in the film version. She's been dating him for a long time. And I think she just sees that he's not, gonna achieve his dreams or something. I think it's Teko, his girlfriend. Yeah. And she's about nearly the same age as him, and he's not gonna achieve his dream. She doesn't believe it because she wants him to get a real job, and he's just sort of, always thinking, the greatest opportunity is gonna be around the corner. In the comic book, she's actually much more supportive. But when she gets drunk,
she is a big fan of his in the comic book.
Right, but when she gets drunk, she becomes like abusive drunk, like a shitty person, like a real shitty person, which I was surprised to see in a comic book how well that was done. It's sort of like when we did the episode based on Occult. Remember the character who got drunk and he just became shitty, and it totally changed your view on them. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, she is sort of shitty when she gets drunk, and she's like abusive. But that doesn't happen in the film. In the film, she's more just one-dimensional sort of bitchy girlfriend. But you got to look at it in a situation where, like, if you're with somebody and you're just kind of sick of them. But she does come off as an asshole. Anyway, she
really does.
She got attacked, and there's like these whole things with what this film basically is a zombie film, and it's about as an American.
I love the designs of the zombies too.
They're awesome. It's about as an American as a zombie film is for a Japanese film. But they did it really well. Like we're doing pretty good, 2 for 2, pretty good Asian-centered zombie horror films.
These zombies are way more like demon type of things than zombies.
Yes, which is alluded to in the comic book, but it's not in here. It's not exactly like explained in the film. I don't think it's
Well,
fully
don't
explained.
spoil the comic because
I
I've only
won't.
read the first 11
But
issues.
but the way that the zombies look in this film, and the zombies in this film, I think are probably the best zombies I've seen in a long time, because they go
Yeah.
from the sort of Sam Raimi-esque sort of or Stan Winston style super designed, hyper stylized zombie creatures that are disgusting looking, and I just love the way they look, and I think
Yeah, their
like
fucking eyes, like whatever they did to their little pupils, that they're kind of like crooked and off balance, is so disturbing looking. To
yeah,
me.
like all the zombies in the film look bloated, like if they've been underwater for a couple years. They kind
It
of have
really
that.
it had a Dead Alive kind of feeling to me.
Exactly, that's what I meant, like a Peter Jackson style, like stylized cartoonish zombie, but it's still like really disgusting looking.
And
So
they're
anyway,
very funny. I don't know if anybody here knows anybody listening Doctor Who, but there's an episode in the library where there's this guy in a spacesuit and he just keeps repeating the same thing over and over. And he keeps going, "Hey, who turned out the lights?" And it really reminded me of that. Like it's just like gibberish replaying as they're trying to kill you.
yeah, I think that's.
Basically,
I could have sworn we saw. What was it? Oh, did we see? What was that
we
movie with?
reviewed. I think we did review a Doctor Who episode where they it keeps making him say the same words, and it's like this thing that's stealing his language. In the
Doctor
ice planet.
Who. We saw Doctor. What planet are you on? We never reviewed Doctor Who for this fucking show. You nuts?
Really? I wanted to. Why? Oh, maybe you
Whoa.
didn't want to because you're an asshole.
Okay, there you go. No, I think I'm thinking of I'm thinking about Pontypool, where people just kind of repeated the same thing over and over.
Oh,
But in this
well,
film,
this Doctor Who episode is very much like that Pontypool movie.
so Hideo is 35. He's relegated to being an assistant for a manga artist. So, like I've said before in a couple episodes ago, I'm sure with Japanese episode, I'm probably Itchy the Killer or something. In Japanese comic books are different from American comic books, as American comic books have a whole month to sort of get an issue out, which is like 32 pages. I mean, in Japan, their comic books are weekly. So they're like 32 pages a week of artwork.
Do they have like bigger crews working on them and shit?
That's what you see in this film, which is like 4 people that are drawing backgrounds. You know what I mean? They're busy drawing backgrounds and stuff like that, while the main artist will probably just fill in the character work, which is like a totally different style of, getting it together, because mostly it's strange, right? Like, I mean, it's more like of a machine working on comic
it's
books
like
than
assembly
it is.
line manga.
But I'll say this, I love manga more than I do American comics. But there are great American graphic novels, don't get me wrong, but they get a lot done with different stories are kind of told with Japanese comic books. So Hideo is within a crew of 4 that work for this one mangaka artist, and they have like the one fat guy who's sort of jealous that the cute girl in the office is sleeping with the married mangaka artist. There's another guy who just kind of works there. There's a cute girl, obviously, that's sleeping with the manga guy. And they're just sort of, they have to do this bullshit job because their works aren't like the mangaka. They're not
It
famous or
doesn't
anything
seem like that bad a job, though. Honestly, even if it's not your stuff, you're getting to work with art and do what you want to do.
Yeah, but if you're
Sort of.
just drawing a background and you're not drawing the story, I think you kind of
Yeah,
get.
but you're still in the world you want to be in, like next door to the world you want to be in.
I guess in a sense it could be that, but Hideo is sort of like
It's better than working in a supermarket or something. Like I've done that kind of shit.
Hideo's girlfriend kicks him to the curb. She kicks him out of the house, and he spends that night outside. She got bit. She got bit by something. She was just talking about how she got attacked earlier, and she's just her attitude is exacerbated. And he goes to the apartment the next day. He has his gun and everything with him. And what does he see through that peephole? She's not opening the door.
Well, that's exactly where I finished reading. But oh my god, this is when I knew I was gonna love this movie. I already liked it, but like, oh, just like the contortions and shit that she's doing. Like,
yeah, they actually
amazing.
had a different actress do the contortion moves. Miho Suzuki.
It was so good.
There was a different girl because Teko was played by a different actress, but by Nana Katase. But Miho Suzuki, I think, is a professional dancer. Because
Yeah,
I
I'm
found
looking
her.
at her. She's hot. I would love her
Yeah.
to contort on me like
She's
that.
she's actually has, I think, YouTube channel where she does like impromptu dances in New York City and stuff like that. But she's playing
Okay.
Teko, the zombie version, and there's this whole sort of it reminded me a little bit of the headless girlfriend from Evil Dead, but not
Yeah, it's
claymation, obviously.
It's very Evil Dead 2 feeling.
Yeah, so she's like contorting. It's like The Ring, sort of like all this weird shit going on, and she's she's mutated and stuff like that. And he finds his way out of that moment. He actually accidentally kills her, and he's like frightened, so he gets out and he goes back to the place where he works for the comic book artist. And I mean, I was watching what.
That was a good scene coming up. No, I love that.
The scene where he goes to the comic book artist's place where he works. Everybody else is pretty much dead. Like the fat guy that he's friends with, or he's not really friends with him. That guy actually lasts longer in the comic book, and he has a fantastic death scene in the comic. His death scene in the comic is much better than the film version because I think they can't afford it. I almost want to say what it is, but
don't spoil it because I'm still gonna read it.
When you see it, Danny, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's like
what's the name of the character? Because I'm having trouble remembering any names other than like Hideo and Teko.
I'm not sure. It might be Sango. I can't be too sure. I just sort of was. I recognized everybody from how they looked. They pretty much look just like they do in the comic book. Although Hideo's a little bit chubbier in the comic book. But anyway, so that whole scene when he's confronting the fat guy, he's not really confronting him. He's just more in shock because his friend sort of let loose his jealous rage about the mangaka sleeping with that cute girl. So he bashes everybody's head in with a bat. And they even have that brr, brr, that song that came on whenever Tron came out. And when Christopher Nolan's, what was that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio when he was jumping in dreams and stuff like that?
Oh, Inception.
Inception pretty much like made that famous, that sound effect of whenever like trailers and shit now happen, you hear that, and then actually they use that to good effect in this film because I was watching and I was like, wow, this is like almost this is very American. This film, it still has Japanese. A Japanese quality to it just because of the main character is very Japanese in the way he acts.
They get into like actual deep topics in it, and it's not just like silly. Like they get into like him feeling like a failure and shit. Like I don't think they would do that in an American movie.
I was watching it. I was kind of wondering in what way the film adaptation would go from the comic because the comic is very dense. Like I said before, I mean, there's a lot of shit that is not covered in this film. I mean, it covers essentially what it needs to cover.
You said there's like, what is there, like 30 volumes or something?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Like I'm on volume 1, and it took me like a full day to read it.
So I was wondering where it was going to cover and how much it was going to cover. And it's only very briefly hints to one thing, which is a character we'll get to in a second. But I was worried. Just to say that I was worried. I mean, I was very happy in what I saw with the film. It was very good. I still give this movie a very high rating. But there are things in the comic book that couldn't make it to film because I think for budgetary issues. But for the budget, it looked really good for the film. Like the part when
I get why they didn't have him hallucinating that guy either because that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that probably would have been a little bit too much without going into what the origin of the monsters are. Even though they don't really have an origin for the monsters in the comic book yet.
They can't afford like 20 minutes of character development in a live action movie.
Right, but this film is very American in the scope of it. Like it feels and looks like an American horror film, like a good style. Like I know Danny's gonna vomit just hearing this, but World War Z's level of mayhem.
Don't even.
Okay, I'm just saying the level of mayhem. You know the part where he's in the car and then everybody's going crazy?
I think this was way better.
It is. It's 100 times better. I'm just saying it has that amount of mayhem in it, which I was surprised because usually Japanese films don't have that sort of budget to them.
I actually, when I was watching the mayhem in this, I was like, this is the best chaotic scene I've ever seen in a movie. Like, period. Like, it is. It doesn't matter what type of movie. Like, of any kind of, like, chaos scene, that was the best done I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's done really well. And I think the thing I was talking about before about worried about what happens with Hideo's character is that he, in the arc of the comic book, it's a little bit different of his character. It still is somewhat, in this film, he's about, and I didn't really catch on when I was watching because I was so familiar with the comic book. In the film, it's a character arc of him sort of finding purpose in his life and not being a chicken shit. Although I don't think he's really a chicken shit in the film. Like, I think they're trying to frame that
he thinks he's a chicken shit.
Yeah, right. That he doesn't have any. He doesn't believe in himself
because he has a girlfriend who like tells him he's a chicken shit. And,
right.
Like,
so I think that's
inadequate.
I think that's how they're framing it in the film. Although it's sort of different in the comic book because that that sort of fight with his girlfriend doesn't exist in the comic book version, and we end up meeting his a little partner, a little high school girl that he becomes friends with along the way.
Hiromi, right?
Hiromi is this cute little teenage girl that it's different.
I wasn't expecting it to go there at all.
Yeah, that's why it's different in the comic book, because Hiromi gets attacked.
Wait, don't say what is different in the comic book, because you're gonna spoil it.
No, I'm not gonna spoil it, but I'm saying in the film she becomes zombified, sort of. After that big long American style car chase, like that was a really awesome, like the taxi scene where the taxi driver has gone insane.
That was really funny.
And they're trying to fight off this other zombified guy. They're called ZQN. And the Japanese in the comic book, they don't really have an explanation for what the fuck's going on either. But we do end up seeing Hiromi because they were gonna like either part ways because she got attacked, but she is different from anybody else. And this is the only thing I'll say about that without spoiling it, is that she eventually does end up speaking coherently again. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, but the film doesn't do that. She's sort of mute for the rest of the film, and she sort of becomes this overpowered...
I kind of thought maybe she would, because it seems like she's like getting more aware as it keeps going.
Yeah. In the film, that's sort of one thing that I was like, bum. Like, unless they make a sequel to it, they sort of just leave her as this... Sort of like, how would you say?
That whole
sort of
part of it, it seemed like they were trying to fit too many things in the movie.
Right.
That's like my one complaint with the movie.
In the film, Hiromi is sort of left as like a tiger on a leash. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's like, at any moment, she can probably kick the shit out of everybody. But she really doesn't do that. She does it for one moment, but then she doesn't do it at the end. She's sort of like stuck in this stasis of like hypnotism or something like that, or just being mesmerized. And I understand why they couldn't put that in the film, because obviously it happens after the mall scene. Although in the mall scene, that doesn't happen in the comic book. So they kind of needed
The mall doesn't happen in the comic?
The mall does. I'm saying the last scene where he's shooting everything in sight and he's like uses all his bullets up at the finale. That was sort of just... I think that was put in for the film to have sort of this huge... finale. That wasn't in the comic.
What about the one that keeps jumping on his own head?
He's in there. He's in the comic book for sure.
I love that. That was
it's a great
favorite.
Scene. It's an insane scene. And he anyway, so what the storyline essentially is finding Hideo finding his guts, believing in himself. And saying I am a hero. That's because that's in the comic book. That's what he does as well. So how would you describe his relationship with Hiromi? Does he become like a big brother or what?
I think at first he kind of liked her, but he becomes kind of like her guardian or something.
There are parts when he's trying to he almost looks down at her blouse. That's pretty funny because he's like,
but she's like, I think she's a lot younger.
Yeah, right. So he's like, I can't do that. That's a crime. Because it's funny his sort of speeches to himself are funny because he's trying to find reason with everything. Like, he's trying to, like, reason everything out. Like, I'm sure, like, any normal person would if they had the time to. And his relationship with her as a zombie, because it almost becomes a weird sort of buddy comedy in the middle where you're thinking, oh, is this what the film is? Him being friends with a zombie girl?
Yeah, but it seemed really like a loose end. Like, I could tell that in the comic it would obviously expand it a lot more.
Yeah, they expanded a lot more, and she actually, speaks and talks. Like, I think what happens, after, in the mall, how she gets stabbed in the head, but it isn't anything fatal. Like, I think it rearranges or... See, there's people that have this affliction that she does in the comic book, and they call them mutants because they don't completely turn into zombies like anybody else would.
So some people so they should be studying them to see why they're immune.
Right, I mean they could, but the world is still going to hell. So I think it's still in that early stages in the film, and they obviously in the comic book they do make it to the mountain. So I mean, there's a lot of shit that they can make 6 or 7 films out of what they've just so far, and there's plenty of like antagonists, and I think I feel like
the film was like maybe a month and a half. Because he had a beard at one point, like...
Yeah, there is a time jump in the middle of it where while he's on the road with Hiromi, that he grows out his facial hair, and I like the way the film is shot too. It's shot really well. It's shot, it looks like it's using its budget correctly for what it is. I mean, it might be a low budget film. It might be actually a higher end budget film for what it is, but I think
I didn't get any feeling of low budget from this.
Yeah, that's why. Because usually every other Japanese film sort of has a low budget to it. If you see any other films, they look sort of really shittily made. But essentially, the third act of the film is when Hideo and Hiromi make it to the mall, this sort of strip mall, and they end up meeting other survivors that are living on the rooftops, and they find two primary antagonists. And it's not an antagonist that's sort of like, it's sort of done better than how 28 Days Later was. You know, where they meet the army, and the army suddenly is the bad guy at the end of the film. And I think what they did right about this is that, because you can just see these two guys at the end are sort of like, and the crew of guys that they hang out with are antagonists because they take Hideo's gun away and they're sort of bullying him around. And I think
they become kind of good though eventually.
I think well, not that other one. That other guy, they're still all assholes anyway. I think I like that little twist where the one guy fucked over the other bad guy because he wanted to be in charge because he had a gun.
One of them was fighting with him at the end, right? He was.
Yeah. That's why I recognized him. I was like, hey, fuck that guy too. But whatever. They were all being dicks. And but I think the whole point wasn't that they had these sort of antagonists. I think it was more just about learning about Hideo and him becoming, a better guy. And they run into this other woman named Sango. I think that's her name, right? The girl with the black hair.
Sugumi.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Sugumi. Then, she becomes actually a primary character in the comic book as well. And in the film, in the comic book, she's actually like, she's sort of like, Negan's wives from The Walking Dead, where they sort of she has to have sex with guys to kind of survive.
Right.
And they change her. They actually make her older in the film, and I think they made her older to sort of age appropriate the main guy, because in the comic book I think she's probably 19 or 20, as opposed to the other girl being like 15 in the comic book. Mm-hmm. And she's sort of like more punk rocker. She has blonde hair in the comic book, and she's a little bit more sort of punky. Do you know what I mean? Not like an asshole, but she's punky, but certainly not like an ass. Not like irresponsible. She's actually wants to get out of that life, that she doesn't want to have to depend on these fucking cavemen taking advantage of her.
What's that creepy guy's name? The leader.
The guy with the overalls.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm calling him Mr. Overalls, but he's a total dick. And I thought I saw him in something else, but he's a total dickhead. Like, the antagonists in this film are real dickheads. They're real shitheads. And they did well in making you dislike. Well, once somebody has your gun, you're like, that's his gun. You're watching the movie like, that's his gun. He should have it. But of course they waste the fucking bullets. But I do think the film does this. It does justice with what it was able to cover in the comic book. For that sort of, it covers up to the mall arc, which is still like a hefty amount. Because in the comic book, like, I was just reading one of the chapters now, and I realized that
they probably get way more into like the bad guys and their.
For sure. But
who they are as characters and everything.
In reading the comic book, because the comic book is nearly photorealistic for what it is. In fact, because I was kind of looking at some of the poses that some of the characters running. And I realized that the whole comic completely is probably photographed, and then they just draw over the people, and they turn them, for sure. I was just reading one of the issues now, and I looked at the poses were a little bit lazy of the person running, where you can tell it's somebody just sort of like telling somebody to do a pose of running, and they kind of just stand there with one foot and the other one in the air, and the arms are sort of lazy. Like, if you're actually seeing somebody run, they look different than they would if you tell them to pose, and that's what the pose look like. And that's not to say anything about the comic. The comic is still fucking incredible. Like, tell them about the comic book a little bit, how it's drawn and how it looks and how it's paced.
Oh yeah, it's drawn awesome. I only read the first 11 issues, but it took me like a few hours, like, because it's really dense, like, and the artwork is awesome. So I'm just looking at each panel and reading it, and there's a lot of writing and.
Yeah, the comic is incredibly gruesome. It's graphic. The zombies look insane, and I don't want to get into. I read
my first real zombie because there wasn't any zombies until the last page.
Yeah, I truly suggest you read the comic book. Watch the film and read the comic book. That's why I told Danny to do both, because the comic book, like the zombies, there's something more than zombies there as well. Just the sort of. Like the way that the creatures look that are glimpsed into in the film, like his manga friend, the woman that comes after he sees his friend kill himself with the razor blade to the throat. Sorry, the box cutter to the throat. When that lady comes out, they look like that, but there's like zombies that like form up out of 5 of them. There's huge giant hulking zombies, monsters. They're not even
Oh,
just
cool.
monsters. They're not even just zombies. They're like monsters, like actual fucking like weird looking monsters
Do
that
they
come out.
ever explain?
Up to from what I just saw, yeah, but I don't want to I don't want to get
Yeah,
into it
no,
because that'll.
don't tell me. I'm just curious.
I don't
Is
know
it
whether
like a
you'll like it
Resident
or
Evil
not,
type
but
of thing, or-
I think you'll think it's cool regardless because there's a lot of weird shit going on, and
Yeah.
it's a very complex comic book, but the film covers what it needs to cover. If it's looking for an all audience sort of film where it took a generic swipe of the storyline and gave it to the audience, I think it did a really good job. Um, it would have been nice if they put in the hallucination angle, but I think that probably would have taken away from the
He's
film.
not
Maybe.
really like. I mean, yeah, I guess he's hallucinating, but I don't know. I do
He's
a lot of the
he's
stuff
and
that
this
he's
is another
doing.
Walking Dead reference. He's hallucinating in the way that that Rick was when he was talking on the phone to his dead wife. That sort of thing, where he's talking to somebody else, even though this was obviously going on before the zombie shit. He was
Most
talking.
of what he's doing is just talking to himself, which I do all the time. But I don't hallucinate other people. But I talk to myself the way he does all the time. Like I think it's
Yeah, me
normal.
too.
I think everyone does.
But I think he's having full fledged conversations with somebody who's not there, as opposed to us just sort of saying shit to ourselves. He's actually
Yeah.
talking to somebody else and hearing something back. And there's people who call him out on him in the comics, so it's funny in that way. But what did you think about the third arc of the film? Because the first arc is mostly him finding all this shit and getting freaked out. The second arc is his relationship with Hiromi and her being a zombie, and then the third arc is them trying to escape this, which it feels like it's episodes. The movie feels like it's 3 different films.
Yeah, it
And
does.
the third part, what did you think what did you think was the strongest arc of the film? I think personally it's the first arc. But
Yeah, the first one was the best because.
but I don't think it's any lesser.
I like the first arc the best, but the third part was, second best to me.
Yeah, the third arc
Because-
is essentially the super action part of the film.
Yeah, but I honestly I like the first part better because
Yeah,
was just
same
like
here.
the introduction and more character development and.
Yeah, the
last one was
first
just,
the
like,
first arc,
killing
the
monsters.
good thing about films, like films never carry out the ending, is because the first arc is like you're discovering stuff, and you're getting to see shit unexplained, and it freaks you out. That's what makes it so interesting. And then the third arc, they sort of always have to have, this is what you paid your money for. Here's the craziness of the film, and it truly is
I'd
like.
actually rather a sequel. Like I wish it would have kept.
Yeah, I hope
going.
so. I hope so. Because Japanese films, for the most part, when they sell them to like main audiences, because we've seen some pretty gruesome Japanese films like Ichi the Killer and stuff, but not a lot of films are that graphic anymore in Japan because they're trying to sell it to wider American audiences and whatever other audiences.
Fuck that. They should do what they do.
Because the violence in this one is pretty fucking graphic. The last half of the film is graphic when he's blowing these zombies' face, and I think it's okay because they're zombies and they're not shooting humans. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Even though they're technically humans. But like that, that big fat guy who's running down and his head explodes and he still continues running. Meanwhile, his face is like opened up and like fucked up. It's a really good finale with him just blasting away all these zombies, using every bullet and using pretty much all his practicing to kill these zombies. I think he was skeet shooting, right? That's what he did,
Yeah.
so that's why he has to do it here.
I really
man.
love the guy that keeps jumping on his own head.
Yeah, there's a track and field guy, and I think he obviously died, and he is stuck doing his jumps. Not a track like what is that called? What is that called?
Where you jump over the vault.
Yeah, right. And
Vaulting or whatever.
he constantly does that, and it's just such a it's such a cool thing because I've never seen that in a film. You know what I mean? Like where he's just jumping. The only time I've seen vaulting in a film was like Revenge of the Nerds and shit. Like not even Revenge of the Nerds. I just remember like I haven't seen anybody vault in a film honestly, and
Well, now you have.
and in this it's just cool because this guy who's like a superhuman creature, he's vaulting and he falls on his head because his head is caved in. So I assume that's why his head is caved in because he keeps jumping and falling on his head.
But
And
his
eventually
skull is thick. So
And
it's
eventually,
okay.
and eventually at the end, he makes it onto one of the rooftops and he starts killing people. But I think it ends strong. It ends very strong, as for showing a main character learning about himself. I think it's a little bit. The only negative aspect is obviously Hiromi. There's no explanation of why she survived. I think what they did is that because she got bitten by a baby, maybe they say it wasn't that bad of a strain that she got infected. You know what I mean? I think that's what they
Oh, okay.
implied. But I
Maybe the
think
baby's immune system was fighting it off or something.
probably, but I think in the comic book they obviously have her do a lot more, and she like kicks fucking ass in
Yeah,
the
that was
comic book.
definitely the weakest part of the story for me.
Like just alone in the taxi cab scene, her taxi cab, she's like zombified by then, and she starts kicking the shit out of people in that. And they change it obviously for the film because they don't want to overcomplicate the storyline. But I think they do really well, and it ends on this sort of somber shot of Hideo in the car looking out the window, and I liked it. You know what I mean? I really liked the film, and I really, really hope they cover it with a sequel. But I
They
don't know.
should.
I don't know how they would. I don't know how they would do it going into what the comic book does, because the comic book goes like triple beyond what this film has even covered. I can't even explain it
Right.
because it's like it's absurd the shit that you see in the comic book, but it's done really well. Um, well, I'm sorry, I like mostly talk because I read this shit. But
No, that's okay.
do you have any
You were
other like
passionate about it.
ideas about this film? I Am a Hero.
I really liked it. My only problem was it seemed kind of scattered, but that's because it's not able to cover all the shit in the comic. So, yeah, that's it.
Oda is the name
I
of the
have to
girl, by
read
the
the
way.
comic. Like, that's it.
Oda, I think her name. You said Sugumi. Her name is Oda, I think, right? That was her real name. The girl who
Oh,
was in
I
the
don't
mall
know.
with them. She was a fun character too in the comic book. And I think I can't wait for you to read the comic book. Everybody read the fucking comic book. It's actually, let me see where it's released. It's released by
Oh,
first
Sugumi Oda, yeah.
Kengo Hanazawa. I Am a Hero. I'm trying to figure out who publishes it. But they actually sell it in omnibuses. So omnibus is like a hefty version of the book, like Dark Horse Manga. Dark Horse Manga does a lot of good. They they choose really good comic books to come over to America. Manga,
Okay.
Japanese comic books. So I Am a Hero omnibus. I think they have the first three or first two. Definitely
Hmm.
read the books. They're fucking good. You can find them in comic books. There's only like $15 for the first one. I'm sure you could find them cheap. For $8, you can get 22 used. I would even say if you're a comic book artist, buy the book for like a buck and just look at the for cheap, and then look at the art because the art is incredible,
It really
and
is
the
good.
story
Yeah.
and the storytelling is great, and the film does the comic book justice. I wonder what they would be able to do with a sequel. I hope they do, just for the sake of the where the storyline goes is insane, and I don't know.
Well, they're only gonna make it if they could do it good.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully. But I enjoyed it. I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Trying to reconcile with your girlfriend, and she decides to get all like stretch out her body and flip around and contort and try to kill you,
okay.
and you get out of
I'm
it.
gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Would get a 10 if it was more coherent, but 9 out of 10. A guy keeps jumping full strength onto his head, and his skull is fine. But then you hit him with a piece of wood, and suddenly his head explodes.
Well, what's the coherence issue that you have with it? What is
That
it that?
they No, it's exactly like the comic book expands on the teenage
Oh, I
girl,
see.
whatever her name is, like
I see
Hiromi
what
or
you mean.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, like because they like that part felt like, oh, like that's supposed to be something, but they couldn't do it.
Yeah. So there you go. We have one guy jumping over and falling on his head for a rating, and the other, the girlfriend trying to kill you, but then you end up, accidentally killing her and getting the fuck out. With that, Danny, what's the final word?
Curtain Man.
The horror deconstruction.